Welcome to the Conversation Room with Armstrong Dixon.
A place where complex financial topics become simple conversations.
So, topic for today is why does coordination matter when complexity grows? Which I'm assuming that families don't understand that they're fully complex until someone tells them. So, part of what we like to do with families is identify that there are coordination gaps between tax, legal, and financial issues that our families deal with. So our job is to help guide them through those decisions, making sure that any blind spots that are apparent, we can address and then go through the pros and cons of each thought, idea, and potential path.
Well, it's like this has probably happened to you 200 times in your career is you meet with somebody and they say, I already have an attorney. Like I did the wills and documents. Here it is. Like here's the big binder. I did all the stuff. And then they'll say, I have the investments in place. Here's my accounts. And then one of the common ones we'll see is, okay, you did these trust accounts. You set this up or you did this trust, but then you never retitled the accounts to the trust. So part of the issue that we always end up seeing is the attorney's doing a great job, doing exactly what they should be doing.
Right.
Right. Great documents, best you could pay for, best law firm, Baltimore, D.C., you pick it. But then there's no coordination between them and the investment advisor, who also is doing a really good job, right? Of picking the right investments for you, understanding your risk tolerance. But the two of them aren't talking to each other. So then you've created these documents that's 200 pages, and then you never retitled anything to the trust.
So, and do you know what those 200 pages say?
Right. They've never read them.
Right.
They remember, oh, yeah, we went to that office like 6 years ago and we sat there and we signed them, but then nobody looked at them since then. They collected dust and no one's evaluated. They don't really understand what's in them other than they trust the attorney, and the attorney probably did a really good job of creating that. But then the attorney's moved on to the next client and hasn't revisited it at all. Meanwhile, over that last 6 years, what's happened?
Things have changed.
Things have changed. Situations got more complex. Business has grown. They bought that piece of real estate. They had another grandkid. Like their circumstances have changed along the way.
Yeah, basically they lived.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So like where then do you come in? Like what are you uncovering when you're having that conversation with them?
So thinking, and I'll use a big word, cross-disciplinary, which is hard for me to say when I started the career, but when you're looking at tax, financial, and legal together, what we're allowing the conversation to get to is making sure that whatever the attorney has done, they have legal in mind and not necessarily financial and tax. So when we ask the client, okay, why did you do this document? What went into it? What planning? What was your life like at that moment? So then we can figure out what the goal was at that time. How have your goals changed? So then we can bridge the gap and make sure that legal document is still appropriate at that time. And then we can go into what those coordination gaps are, like the retitling, like you mentioned. So if we have a updated balance sheet, which is one of our primary goals for the client, if they're a new client, then we look at each individual asset and make sure that we say, all right, well, this asset can be owned various different ways. So if you own it individually, you can own it jointly. You can own it if you're using a revocable living trust in the revocable living trust. So, and what are the pros and cons of all three of those? Because there are.
Right.
There's pros, there's cons to each one of those options. So our job is to try to point out and identify what those options are, pro, con, and then help that client make the best decision based on their life, because every client's different.
Right. And the people that you're working with, right, these business owners or corporate executives, they're good decision makers usually.
Right.
Right. So if you're able to then sit with them and say, okay, here's A, B, and C, here's the pros, cons of each, they're good decision makers. They're going to make a decision that's the best for their family.
Right.
They often don't know what those options are because they can't see through the complexity that's been created, largely because of their financial success.
Right.
So these conversations, usually aren't, hey, you need a will, or hey, you need to open a investment account, or hey, you should contribute in your 401k, right? The people that we're talking to have had those conversations, and those conversations are important, but generally they're past that. Right. This isn't the 101 stage of why you should invest for the long term.
Right.
It's looking at an investment account and saying, okay, you bought investment X and it's grown by a significant amount over that time. Have you considered Roth 401k, which would have made all that appreciation tax free? And as we look forward, how can we use some of these tools available to us, like HSAs or like Roth 401ks, solo Ks, a popular one with a lot of clients we work with, to then have that appreciation be in a good place for them long term.
Right.
So again, it's not that the investment itself is wrong or anything particularly imprudent or improper with it. It's just not planning ahead to think, hey, where should we have this long term? Because oftentimes the clients that you're sitting having this conversation with realistically aren't making investment decisions for themselves. They're making it for kids and grandkids.
True.
Right? They're planting trees that they're never going to sit under.
Right.
So thinking about that in a multi-generational context is helpful. And a lot of times no one is really coaching them through that because it's, okay, it's springtime. We're working on the tax return for last year. Right. Or, okay, we're checking the box. We sat with the attorney and we did the wills and trust. Okay, we did the buy-sell agreement and we signed it in 1996. Right. So these things don't get looked at and reviewed on a periodic basis. And then those coordination gaps exist.
Well, and I like to use the word stale because I like to check boxes and move on, right? But you can't do that when your life is changing every day, every year, every 10 years.
Right.
So you have to make sure that somebody is aware of what has changed in the world and how does the changing family or business apply to the changing world, whether it's tax laws, whether it's legal ramifications, the investment landscape, interest rates. There's a lot of things that can change. So having someone that is on top of that is important and also is on top of what your family wants, what your values are, your morals, etc. That is one of the most important pieces to how we can help our clients is really knowing how their family runs. Because yeah, you can save taxes, great. But if that's not the number one priority, why we're going to point it out, but why are we going to push the client down that road when it's not their number one? You know, maybe their number one is to benefit their grandkid in whatever way, buying a house or funding college or helping them buy a car or whatever the support for the grandchild is. Maybe that's more important than saving a couple dollars in taxes.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's pulling out the complexity where it doesn't need to be there. Right. There's a Da Vinci quote that I like. And sometimes with those quotes, I'm not sure if they're really from the people, but it's attributed to Da Vinci of like things.
We're going to go with it.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Things should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler.
Yeah.
So it's like if you have a complex financial life and you have financial success, there's going to be complicated things. But oftentimes we can look at it and say, where's the complexity you can pull out of that? And make it simpler. And then that makes the picture clear to make decisions. And for the tax point, it's like, well, I got an idea so you pay less taxes. Like, stop making money. Right. That works for 100% of the population. If you don't make money, then you're not going to pay taxes doing that. So you're right. Like, that's not the end in itself of reducing taxes. That's a factor a lot of times in the decisions, but it's not the ultimate objective of it.
Well, it's funny. You brought that up. And I remember just starting out my career, had a little bit of success. And my father was my CPA at the time. And I went to him complaining, why is the tax bill so much? This is really frustrating. And he looked at me, I'm assuming with all the love that he had for me, and goes, well, then stop making money.
Yeah.
I said, okay, all right. I get it now. You know, so the complexity of making money or having success in a business, you know, expanding employees, expanding your revenue streams, expanding your territories, whatever you're doing is going to add layers to the decision making.
All right.
So, you know, getting into us trying to know and understand the family as much as possible also limits the amount of families that we can serve. So one of the strongest values that Armstrong-Dixon has is making sure that if the client is working directly with us, they are the correct fit. Because, you know, you can get advice from your Uncle George. You can get it from this new AI thing that everyone's talking about, right?
Yeah, information is everywhere. It's free.
It is. It's free. So we want to be sure that we can stand alongside of you. We can be your partner. Or I like family CFO. That's another term that is relatively new for us thrown around. Architect, quarterback, whatever you want to do. You need, in our opinion, when you want to make a important decision in your life, whether it's personal, whether it's business, have someone you can bounce that off of, and make sure that you're thinking of all the different angles before you make that decision.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And you brought up the word stale before, which I like that word, especially because you're a cook. You're a pretty good cook. Like, I'm not, but you're into that.
Right.
Often you give these presents, right, of like really nice olive oil.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
What do
not
I do
able
with
to
that?
discern like what's good or bad,
Right,
but
right.
you understand
Let me
that.
fry my chicken
So
in it. Right.
You might make like a perfect meal, right? But if you make it for the wrong number of people and you put it in your fridge or you set it aside, like, it's going to go bad. It's nothing
Right.
wrong with the preparation of it,
Right.
but just if you're not having it for the correct audience, inevitably that great meal you cook is going stale. And having that limited number of families, that's the only way that works, right? So if we're saying, all right, we can serve 300 families and we can serve them really well,
Right.
we're then able to pick up the phone when the client needs it, right? Sometimes it's maintenance mode and there's not a lot going on.
Right.
Other times there's a death in the family. There's an illness with a child. There's a big real estate change in the portfolio that they want to talk through. There's a business decision that has to happen. So as those lives change, when you have that limited number of families you serve, we're able to answer the phone, know who the people are that we're talking to, know their family situation, know what's important to them, and then lay out, okay, here's what we see as a thinking partner. Here's options A, B, and C for the situation that you have right now. What decision is the right one for you? And that really only works if you have a limited number of families that you can serve. So that's why we have that as an objective here as a firm.
Well, and our best clients are changing every day. If you had one job and you kept the same job for a 40-year career, like our parents' generation, it's not as your life doesn't change as much. But even in that situation, your family, you have kids, you have grandkids, you want to buy a second house, whatever it is. So you might feel that your life is simple, but that might be because you haven't thought about all the different other angles. So whether you think you're complex, you don't think you're complex, whether you think you're simple and you're actually not simple, having a conversation, which I guess is one of the things we did with this with this room that we have here now, is so very important.
And the conversation might be the two spouses in the house. Right. Many spouses have sort of division of labor. If one spouse is going to manage more of the finances than the other of doing that. And how often are the spouses getting on the same page with that conversation? So part of what you're doing is serving as a thinking partner for them to help them understand balance sheet. You said before, that's what you own, who you owe.
Right.
Do both spouses understand that? Both from just day-to-day management and understanding what the common goals are in the family, but also when you get those phone calls if something happened to one of the spouses.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's the second spouse who didn't know anything about the finances, that's a pretty intimidating spot to be in. You just had an extremely tragic event, death, illness, disability, something bad that's happened. And then now all this financial weight's on you. So part of what we're doing in this conversation is we're insisting that, hey, who are the decision makers? The two spouses, they both need to be in the meeting. Right. Both need to be in the room. We're not going to make one of them all of a sudden have an interest in investing. We don't assign, you have to read the Wall Street Journal now. Like if one of the spouses doesn't have an interest in that. Right. But they should understand that there's a partner working with their family who does understand and know where the moving parts are. Yeah. So that if something does happen, there's continuity there to be able to work with our firm through some of the most difficult and darkest days that a family might go through. And then the flip is true as well. If you have really good, happy events, right? Right. Sale of a business, birth of a grandchild, things that happen that are a lot of fun. Money is a tool to serve those ends, right? Those families. So you're then there for both the good times and to be able to help understand what a difference money can make in the lives of people that they love and care about. Sure.
So the communication is also another key element, whether it's, you mentioned, to spouses, whether it's to the next generation, whether it's to key employees or business partners. Communication is so key to making decisions. And then also when a tragedy happens, that the person that was not involved in the finances or in the legal or in the tax world of your business or family knows that they have someone that is on top of on top of all of those topics.
Working with them. And we're bringing the attorney back to the table, bringing the accounting back to the table, working with them to do that. So I think if we summarize the conversation, What we're trying to do as a firm is pull out that complexity,
Mhm.
right? Make it as simple as we can to help the client make good decisions. Do that. As their lives are getting more complex, which inevitably happens, the role that we play is to help find simplicity in that.
And one of the key elements that I have found that really works with families is providing examples and saying, and also ensuring that this might feel uncomfortable and the first time that you've gone through this life event, but we deal with this all the time. So let us help you. Let us provide some examples, analogies, whatever it takes to allow you to have the comfort and the assurity that you're making the best decision for you, for your family, for your business at that specific time.
Cool.
So
Good stuff.
thanks for joining us.
Good conversation.
Yeah. Appreciate all the time that anyone watching this video has spent with us. If you ever have a topic that you want us to discuss, to have the conversation about, please email info@armstrongdixon.com. Get a hold of the advisor that you're communicating with regularly, and we'd be happy to sit here with some coffee or water or whatever and discuss the topic that you want to hear more about. Thank you all.